All right, this is going to be a quick demo on how to use EQ to get some space between tracks. This is very, very surface level, very basic. I've got two tracks here. I've got bass guitar up here on the top, and I've got an electric guitar here on the bottom. I'll put them next to each other, and we can zoom in so we can see them better. But this is going to be all about how to use the basic EQ functions within Logic to just really clean up the tracks in a really simple way. This is a classic conundrum. We have bass and electric guitar. They're going to be competing for frequencies. So I'm just going to play this short passage that I have selected here. All right, so let's take a look at this. If I listen to a little bit of the bass by itself, and a little of the electric guitar. All right, so here's where your ears can deceive you. When you listen to that way, you might feel like the electric guitar sounds quite thin. When in reality, we're going to see that the electric guitar actually has too much low stuff in it to allow for the bass to properly come out. So let's pull up an EQ, and we're going to take a look at what this looks like visually. I'm going to have the analyzer turned on and set to post. This just means that I can see the audio. So that the analyzer, if it were off, I don't see anything. So with it on, I'm going to see it. And post means I'm going to see the audio as it looks exiting the EQ. If I have it set to pre, then when I change something about the EQ, like turn this up, I'll hear the difference, but I won't see the difference. If I set this to post and do the same change, you're going to see it change here. Okay, so I like to have the EQ set to post, which means that I'm going to see what I'm hearing at all times, as opposed to see something different than what I'm hearing. So when I play this guitar, we can see it's taking up this whole frequency range, okay? But you see over here, it's very jagged. That's all the distortion, and this is the slightly smoother sounds. That's where the notes are happening, like the actual musicality of it. And I can demonstrate that by showing you if I pull all of that jagged stuff out, it's going to sound duller, but it's still going to sound like we can hear, you know, the chords that are being played and things like that. You just won't hear the distortion. Sort of a softer sound, a more dull sound. So what we're going to do with this is we're actually going to pull out some of this lower end with the high pass filter, which is here. So I'm just turning this up here. So I've reduced a lot of that lower end. You might say, oh, that sounds much weaker. Isn't that a bad thing? Well, no, because the bass guitar is going to cover that. In addition to pulling out the low stuff, I'm actually going to turn a little bit up over here just so we get that sort of crispness and that sparkle, because this guitar, that distortion is really what's going to cut through, as opposed to the bass, which is going to have a smoother sound to it. So that's the EQ on the guitar, before it and after. Again, you might think that it sounds better before the EQ, but that's only because we're listening to the guitar by itself. It's going to sound bigger and fuller by itself, but it isn't by itself. If you remember, we have a lot of tracks here, so we want to make sure that we balance the tracks properly with each other. Let's go to the bass, which is here, and listen to that. So again, this sounds really, really nice by itself, but the guitar was contributing a whole bunch of low end, and the bass is contributing a whole bunch of low end, so we have to be careful with how much low end there is before everything just gets filled with low end, which sounds sort of fun and big and powerful, but eventually it just is nothing but power, and it makes everything sound muddy and not clean and open. So if we go ahead and look at the bass, it's looking like a bass. We got all this low stuff and not a lot of things happening here. So what can we do with this? Well, not much. We don't want to take a lot of this low stuff out. Preferentially, depending on the type of music, there's a lot of stuff in this low frequency that for a rock tune we really don't need. Depends on the type of music and what you're going for, but I'm actually going to pull out a fair amount of this stuff here. And we're going to go all the way into like the 50s. And you're going to hear It sounds largely the same, unless you have a humongous subwoofer you're listening to this through, and you'll hear the differences. Bass guitar for, pop and rock is going to sound really good in that like 60 to 80 range, depending on where you are. 80 is a really nice spot for bass guitar. Just really depends. But it goes to show you we don't need all this low stuff. Now the high stuff, if you want lots of string noise, you can search for it. It's going to be up here somewhere. You hear that come through. So you can get some of that string noise in there too. But remember, the electric guitar without distortion is all covered right here too. So you might not get a lot of string noise out of it, but that's okay. So these are just two little changes. That's the bass guitar. Here's the electric guitar. So now let's listen together. See, it sounds more open. It sounds more open. Now you might say that electric guitar still doesn't sound powerful enough, and some might agree, and that's where we can actually dial this in further. So now that I'm listening to two things at a time, that's where I can really start to mix them together. So here's the EQ on the electric guitar, and here's how much low end I pulled out. Well, maybe I didn't need to pull out so much, so I can listen to the two of them together and pull this back in until I feel like it's starting to cover up the bass. There we go. And that kind of works well for me. Now remember, this can be really, really tempting to just give me all that big low end in the guitar, because it probably will sound okay, again, with just these two instruments. Check this out. Yeah, it starts to sound okay, but we're not going to need it. We have other things to cover the low end. And this is why you see people doing doubles of things like guitars. In fact, in this song, this exact guitar that we're working on is actually doubled. Um, there's a couple of them. They might be hidden right now. I might have trimmed it by accident. It's somewhere in here. But yeah, it's right here. There it is. Yeah, so you see it's doubled. Just specifically to create that big sound, and you could do other tricks with that to make that sound big without just relying on all low end all the time. So just real quick, here it is as we started. I'm going to pull the EQs off. That's the EQ off the bass, EQ off the electric guitar. Here's how we started. And then with the EQs back on. Remember, no change in level, just EQing. So you see how it just sounds cleaner, more open, and it's a little bit more ready to accept all this other stuff that we're going to have to add in somehow. So quick tutorial on basic EQ techniques, electric guitar and bass, rock tune, really simple stuff. Hope you enjoy.